Good morning. Welcome to Daily Global Insights, episode number 223. This is Sri and Sri. Today is August 12th. Sri will join us very soon and we'll be back live. We always start with the global news. We start with China. China requires tougher sanctions, says President Trump. It continues to bully and harass nations around. It has got away with COVID. It has got away with human rights violations, plus its skirmishes in South China Sea. So Biden administration must get tougher, says the ex-trade official who worked with Trump in his administration. US also must demonstrate more committed approach to ASEAN, especially Thailand and Indonesia, say the officials in the ASEAN region. To win back respect and to win back the trust of the ASEAN nations, it cannot be selective in its choice, only focusing on Singapore, Vietnam, Philippines, but also must show its commitment to Thailand and Indonesia. Of course, Taiwan has always been the focus of United States, particularly from the Chinese incursions. Coming to Taiwan, security of Taiwan is critical for Australian survival, says Australia think tank. Once Taiwan is under the control of the Chinese regime, only it's a matter of time before they take charge of Japan and make the way towards Australia in the flashpoint of one island after the other. As chip investments soar, Singapore desires to play catch-up game with Taiwan. As you all know, that the chip is more hotter than crypto. The demand has soared on account of migration taking place from China and less reliance on China. So Taiwan has been upping up the ante. Japan has started manufacturing. Of course, Singapore, Malaysia, which have historically been also manufacturing centers for chip production, and Singapore has to play the catch-up game. Singapore is also opening, and it needs to really up the ante on its GDP as well. So this is one of the areas that they do want to focus. Coming to Europe, European Union is reviewing new possible side effects of mRNA COVID-19 vaccines. There seems to be a common plague, which is one of the reasons why many people are not vaccinating themselves and resisting the mandates that are being applied in various parts of the world. Swiss police threatened to stop enforcing COVID-19 restrictions. The reason being that there is a growing chorus in Europe, which started in France, was in Germany, was in UK, and slowly spreading. And the police feel that it is not appropriate to enforce these restrictions. So therefore, they do not want to be mandated by the government to do the enforcement. Latvia starts pushing back migrants at the tense Belarus border. We talked about Lithuania, we talked about Poland, now Latvia joins the game, and they are asking the Belarus not to let its border porous and allow these people to come into Latvia as well. Belarus also tells United States to cut its diplomatic presence after US imposed tough sanctions on the Belarus regime. Getting to Afghanistan, as war intensifies in Afghanistan, former diplomats say Biden must intervene swiftly to change course. Afghan Finance Minister Mr. Khalid Payanda has resigned and has left the country or leaving the country. With most of the borders and customs under the control of Taliban, Afghan is also facing a revenue crunch and the economy is crumbling very rapidly. Taliban, on the contrary, seems to be in total and complete control after the collapse of Afghan forces, as Taliban seizes control of 9 provincial capitals in 6 days. There was a talk, if you recall, which we reported in DGI, that there was a discussion unless that there is a sit down and a power sharing agreement between the present Afghan government and Taliban. Should Taliban choose to fight, Afghan forces may be able to hold without international support for 6 months. This was the basic assumption, but it doesn't look that way in the way Taliban is seizing control. Taliban also has seized control in its borders with Tajikistan and Uzbekistan, says the Russian officials. So what does that mean? These are typically this northern frontier is very strong in these regions, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, etc. Now, by controlling, Taliban is making sure that there is no dissent or there is no opposition from these northern forces. Moving to the United States news, US Senate passes the framework for $3.5 trillion budget after the passage of the $1.2 trillion infrastructure bill on Tuesday. Biden takes victory lap saying that his economic agenda will soon be unfurled, and this is the great deal in town. We talked about this, and we have also published paper 1 on the infrastructure bill and its implications and the scope of the coverage of the infrastructure bill. As details become available, we will share, and still the details are sketchy, but Medicare, taxes, climate accord, child credits, there's a range of measures that are embedded into this bill. Some of them would become a permanent affair along with the current Medicare and current Social Security and other non-mandatory expenses in the US budget. Debt expansion is not in the bill, and that it is set for another day, or the Democrats may decide that they will never discuss debt expansion and confront the Republicans using the Senate and the House in tango to lift the debt limits. The debt limits are not lifted. Emergency measures have been imposed by the US Treasury. The debt limit was 22. It has borrowed 6.5 trillion. Debt limit expired on August 2nd, and there has been no extension. And Mr. Mitch McConnell, the House Senate minority leader, has said, no, we're not going to lift the debt limit, setting a showdown. Senate votes to back transportation ban of COVID-19 positive migrants. It's a very positive development. If you recall, we have been talking about this, which says that a number of migrants who are illegal migrants who try to make their way through the border, they're not tested. They are either housed locally or they are sent into the communities. But now they will be tested for COVID-19. If happen to be positive, they will not be allowed to be transported. So where they would be located, whether it is they're going to create temporary tents and shelters to house these people and treat them, remains another big question mark. Senate also votes to advance in a partisan manner the sweeping election voting reform bill. Again, we have talked about this. This would grant federal power over states and effectively nationalize the voting laws. This is going to be even a tougher battle, probably the bigger battle with whenever this gets passed. I don't know what procedure they would use. Certainly it's not going to have passed through the filibuster, be it in the House or be in the Senate. And I'm not sure they have the votes in the House as well. Senator Manchin threatens to be a dissenting vote already on this election reform bill. He feels that this will fundamentally threaten the constitutional structure that is prevalent in United States. So this is another big looming battle, along with the 3.5 trillion budget, which is expected to be passed through a reconciliation process. But there's a lot when the law is drafted and officially embedded into the budget, there will be tremendous discussions there as well. So along with this mega budget, sweeping election reforms is another agenda item that will keep us busy post summer. Biden administration calls on OPEC to increase oil production. Why? We are now beginning to see the gas prices rise. In some states, the gas prices are at $6 per gallon. That's an astronomical rise since where we were. Biden also to host world leaders at what he calls a democracy summit. It will be held virtually on December 9th and 10th. This will be followed by in-person meeting, a date and venue to be announced, most probably in the United States. It will bring together a whole range of people from heads of state to civil society to philanthropists and private sector members who typically are engaged in fighting authoritarianism, corruption, human rights, etc. This is an interesting agenda, an interesting meeting that he has summoned. Now, some of his own actions don't constitute democratic process. How he is going to assemble all these people and move the agenda forward remains an interesting point. And who these invited leaders are going to be is another interesting observation, and much to look forward to whenever these summit details are announced. Top U.S. diplomat in New Delhi meets Dalai Lama. This is U.S. diplomat meets Dalai Lama, representing Dalai Lama's representative Ingodup in New Delhi, days after Blinken meet. Well, again, Dalai Lama. The discussions were much more forthright during the Trump administration, but clearly U.S. has picked up momentum on engaging, and this will set another battle around Tibet and the Tibetan region between the United States and China. The Texas House of Representatives voted on Tuesday to bring back the runaway Democratic legislators to the state under the warrant of arrest if required. The 80-12 vote comes after the state Supreme Court voided district court order blocking the law enforcement. So in other words, there was a district court which gave permission to the Democrats, the fleeing Democrats or the fled Democrats, but that has now effectively been voided by the Supreme Court. These Democrats are now in D.C. They are left in limbo, and the House will exit for the break shortly. So there's no one there. They have to eventually get back. And what awaits them? The Texas State Secretary has signed arrest warrant to arrest these 52 people upon arrival. Moving to the election saga, Colorado Secretary of State is investigating the county after election system passwords were posted online. Well, this election saga is going to go on. I'm sure that there is going to be no discovery process, or there will be haphazard discovery process. Then there is going to be a dissent around this whole new election reform and voting bill. And hopefully by 2022, which is not too far, that we will have some kind of consistent election process, as we have crucial House and Senate elections which will define the momentum, or which will define the way the legislative agenda is going to be handled and managed in the balance of the 2 years of Mr. Biden. Coming to COVID, dozens of events are being cancelled across the United States as COVID cases continue to rise. Confrontation also looms as face mask mandates spread. Some say yes, some say no. In schools, some say they will wear it. In some schools say they will not. allow this to happen because the children are likely to suffer. It looks like this confrontation, is now gaining momentum with the anvil of reopening of schools and colleges. At least many corporations have mandated. New York Stock Exchange yesterday passed the mandate that if you want to be on the floor and trading, you got to wear the mask and you have to be also vaccinated. Booster doses are likely to be approved for immunosuppressant patients. Booster doses may soon be approved for others as well, but it looks like these booster doses are gaining momentum, particularly in US. It looks like it's also gaining momentum in some other parts of the world. Active COVID cases in United States are at 6.317 million and growing on an average at 100,000 plus a day. Yesterday was about 105,000. The chaos in the hospital system fast spreading, and many hospitals in quite a few states are facing crisis. To give you the numbers, United States active cases is at 6.351 million, of which California has 1.881 million. As is often the case, Florida is at 481. Florida has moved to number 2 position. It was around 200 to 220. You can see they have added close to 280,000 in less than 3 days. Maryland, which used to occupy the second, has 455,000. Washington State has 256,737. Texas has 212,005. Texas, one can understand because of this border surges and people coming in. Is mind-boggling to understand what exactly is driving the cases. Possibly some of these fellows landing in Florida in terms of the number of cases. Michigan is at 129, but those top 5 states make up roughly the, I think I gave you the number, more than 60% of the active cases in United States. Moving to the Indian news, India has around 1,500 nationals in Afghanistan involved in various developmental projects, and they have brought back 50 nationals from Mazar-e Sharif. Recall, India has passed a direction, or India has directed Indian nationals to return to India from Afghanistan given the surge. We reported that yesterday. India is one of the countries invited to the Afghan meet in Doha later this week, as the crisis reaches a crescendo. INS Kochi reaches Saudi Arabia for joint naval exercises. As you all aware, India conducted naval exercises with Oman. India has an arrangement with Bahrain, and India is now on its way to Saudi Arabia for exercises. ASEAN and India should explore ways to enhance digital connectivity, says Singapore Deputy Prime Minister. Digital India has certainly stepped up its ante, and then moving ahead. Today it is one of the top 3 digital innovation centers, digital users, high mobile adoption and penetration, high rate of transactions in the digital side. So it's no surprise here that ASEAN and India, there is a momentum for India and ASEAN to work together. This is a leadership that's coming from the Singapore Deputy PM. Recall, I think we have covered this again at length. It is Asia which is going to be the epicenter of economic transformation as the world shifts from United States and Europe, and Asia picks up momentum in its share of GDP. Digital electronic vehicles and chip manufacturing are all going to be the driving forces as economic transformation shifts. Nitin Gadkari, who is the master of national infrastructure programs, MSME sector, etc., He is pitching for using India's FX reserves for infrastructure development. Recall there's an infrastructure institution that is being set up to raise capital, source capital, and then deploy it for various projects that are under progress under Nitin Gadkari. Modi government is also on course to monetize 6 crore trillion worth of assets, and it says that it's on course to privatize many of its blue chip public enterprises such as Air India, BPCL, BEML, NINL, and SEI, and it is on track to achieve. This will help the government to augment the revenue side of the balance sheet and also reduce the costs on the other side in terms of providing the capital that is required for these undertakings. Over 72% of financial transaction in public sector banks now done through digital channels, says the government. This is the transformation that we have been talking about. So in banking sector, you have digital channels and digital transactions. It's making 72%. We talked about the e-tag program, that's about 90%. So one can see the growing momentum in terms of digitization. This is what prompted the ASEAN Singapore Deputy Prime Minister to come forward and say they should explore digital connectivity. Like rest of the world, most notably United States, Indian drug regulator now approves study of mixing Covishield and Covaxins, the trials to begin in Tamil Nadu shortly. Vaccine doses in India reach 525 million mark and active cases reduced to 386,351. Certainly India is managing its COVID situation very well. It remains to be seen, how they get past the Delta variant. So when we look at the total cases in India is about 32 million. The discharged or the cured cases is about 31.22 million. And most important number is the number of people getting cured or discharged is less than the number of new cases, and that number, toggles between 2 to 5,000. And the other good news is India has been able to contain its daily new cases to below 40,000. It was 28,000 a couple of days ago, but it seems to have added new numbers. It's about 38,000. Deaths are at 429,000. On vaccines, which we also talked about, India has completed, it's about 522,597. Dose 1, 407,000. Dose 2 is about dose 1 is 407,144,000 according to the Win app, a CoWin app, or 115,450,000 for dose 2. So certainly I think India is, is moving its way towards that. I mean, the number of about 800 million is the number that they are looking at to get past that 70-80% threshold. They're vaccinating around 4.4 to 5 million on a daily basis on an average. There are days when they go 6 million, there are days when they go 3.5 million as well. So transitioning from India news to the markets, better than expected inflation reports sparked a market rally as we saw the Dow index gain 220 points. Consumer price index jumped 5.4% compared to the expectations of 5.3%. But the most important news is the core inflation. Here in the United States, the core inflation, we exclude food and energy. That same format is followed in many places around the world. The core inflation rose only 0.3% in July. This is what prompted the markets to climb 220 points, notwithstanding the fact that there's a daily cry from many of the economists that inflation is looming around the horizon, including the Kansas Fed chair, who made this observation that very much inflation is around the corner. Now, to complete the market story, the Dow finished 35,484, growing 220 points. S&P finished up 10.97 at 4447. NASDAQ at 14,765. The most important thing is that the 10-year yields dipped to 1.332 very marginally. There was, again, not much change in the Bund 10-year and Japanese 10-year. Energy markets saw the price marginally up, both the Brent as well as the oil, and they all grew by about less than $1. The Bitcoin made a modest progress of $1,065, Ethereum $116. So Bitcoin finished at 46,557, Ethereum at 3,255. So with that, we conclude this edition of DGI. We look forward to seeing you again back tomorrow morning in United States and late evening in India.